welcome to the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences. Can you please rise as the speaker and the chair take their seat? And kindly put your phones on silent. Thank you.
Please sit. Thank you.
First and foremost, I think we would like to apologize for starting the program later than was advertised. This will be brief remarks. My name is Professor Obienje, an honorary secretary of the Academy, the president of the Academy, past presidents of the Academy, vice presidents of the Academy, fellows of the Academy, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, students, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the President and fellows of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences, Ghana's premier learned society, we welcome you all to this evening's inaugural lecture, which is on the topic, Unpacking the Complexities of Food Systems and Nutrition Governance, a Game of Thrones, which is to be delivered by Professor RICHMOND NII OKAI ARYEETEY. We would like to inform you that, as by way of information, that since 1973, newly elected fellows of the Academy have had to deliver an inaugural lecture as part of their responsibilities as fellows of the Academy. And in this brochure, if you look, you would see a list of titles of inaugural lectures delivered since 1993 for your information. We are also pleased to inform you that this program is being streamed live via Zoom, Facebook, and also on the Academy's YouTube page. We have a number of students visiting, and as the program progresses, I'll be happy to introduce them. We also do have a number of distinguished visitors. All of us are distinguished. I would like to particularly mention that we have here the country representative for UNICEF in the person of Honorary Osama Magawi Kogali. You're welcome, sir. So at this juncture, it is my singular pleasure to introduce the chairperson for the program, who will then proceed to introduce the speaker and then steer the program onwards. The chairman for today's event, who also is the vice president of the sciences section of the Academy and a member of the Council of the Academy, in the person of Professor ALFRED APAU, OTENG-YEBOAH, is a retired professor of the University of Ghana. Professor OTENG-YEBOAH has taught and trained many students in several African countries, can only maybe make reference to Nigeria, Kenya, and also for many years trained many students who are now occupying many distinguished positions nationwide, internationally. Our chair has published extensively, of course, in his area of specialty and has provided several feature articles on the environment and biodiversity in both the local media and at the international level. Professor OTENG-YEBOAH has chaired many high-level local and international meetings on the environment and biodiversity. He is a founding bureau member and former vice chair representing Africa on the International Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform for Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. He has also chaired the steering committee of the International Partnership for the Seto-Yama Initiative, which is a joint UNU and Ministry of Japan initiative. He is on the trusteeship board of the Erocha Ghana, which is an NGO that advocates for nature and its conservation, and also on the Tropping Board, which is also an NGO in the nature and biodiversity conservation space. This is a very brief summary. Professor OTENG-YEBOAH has received several awards, among them the 2014 International Prestigious Maidori Prize for Biodiversity and the John Phillips Memorial Medal, which is the highest global conservation award of the IUCN. So with these brief remarks, kindly let's welcome our chair to the podium. Thank you.
The President of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences, Vice President of Arts, past presidents, fellows of the Academy, excellencies, invited distinguished guests, students who are now trooping in, and ladies and gentlemen, as our Honorary Secretary has indicated, today's lecture is an inaugural lecture. I'll just pause for a moment for our students to settle. In our annual activities at the Academy, we consider inaugural lectures as very, very important. And therefore, occasion for any inaugural lecture happens to be a very prestigious one. The reason why this is so is because it allows this event, the Academy is able to introduce and also expose the fellows who have been deemed eligible as fellows, and also it helps academic and intellectual life, reflecting what the roles of the Academy play. We have Professor RICHMOND NII OKAI Aryeetey. He is giving his inaugural today. Professor Aryetey's profile, those of you who already have the booklets, it has been provided in the brochure. It is copious, and all details about him have been provided. But suffice it to say that I have one singular honor to briefly highlight some aspects for our purpose in order to reflect the topic which he is going to talk about. And as you would have noted, the topic is unpacking the complexities of food systems and nutrition governance. A Game of Thrones. I'm not going to answer that. He will attempt to give us an indication why he's asking whether this is actually a Game of Thrones. As an introduction to Professor Aryetey, he is a public health nutritionist, and he has a bachelor's degree in nutrition and food science and a master's in public health, all of them obtained from the University of Ghana. He obtained his PhD in human nutritional sciences from Iowa State University in the US, and has risen to the rank of a full professor in 2020. Professor Aryetey is a fellow of the African Nutrition Leadership Program, the Yale University Global Health Leadership Institute, and the Brown University International Advanced Research Institute. He's also a visiting professor at the University of Sheffield Center for Health and Related Research. Prof was inducted as a fellow of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences in the year 2022. Currently, he is a member of the WHO Strategic and Technical Group of Experts on Maternal, Newborn, Child, Adolescent Health and Nutrition, and was a member of the Executive Committee of the United Nations Scaling Up Nutrition, which is dubbed as SUN Movement, in the capacity as monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning expert. And he co-chaired the WHO Guidelines Development Group for Complementary Feeding between 2019 and 2022. He has served in a number of committees, national committees that are related to nutrition, particularly in policy and programming, which include the SUN Cross-Sectoral Planning Group, the SUN Movement Technical Committee, the National Nutrition Partners Coordinating Committee, and the National Salt Iodization Committee. The list is endless. It's huge, and you can also pick up all these in the brochures that have been provided to you. Over the years, Professor Aryetey has provided technical advice and participated in various processes to develop national health and nutrition policies, strategies, and guidelines. And some of the recent policy processes that he has been involved in include the National Nutrition Policy, National Policy for Aflatoxin Control in Food and Feed, National Breastfeeding Promotion Legislation, National Strategy on the Elimination of Trans Fatty Acids from Ghana's Food Supply, and essential nutrition actions. And more recently, he co-led the development, pre-testing, and publication of Ghana's first food-based dietary guidelines and its accompanying food systems guidelines. As I said, the accolades are endless. There are many, and I'm sure every one of us is itching to actually hear what is this paradox, the paradox of what he has referred to as a Game of Thrones, considering unpacking the complexities of food systems and nutrition governance. So I'm happy to welcome all of you to this inaugural lecture, and I'm going to ask the lecturer to come to the podium, but before he does, there is a request which is going to be handled by this Honorary Secretary.
So a round of applause for our chair. Right. Very soon the lecturer will mount the podium, but before then there is a request for a performance by Educating Through Music.
Good evening. So get my slides then, we can start working. Yeah.
Please. He has to switch. He may have to switch via projector.
Okay, so as we work on that, let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Asante. I'm a nutritionist, and before I do my performance, with all due respect, I've recognized my professors and lecturers who made me who I am today, so I would like us to acknowledge them before I go ahead with my performance. So let's show them some love. My performance is being sponsored. So I was given this package that after performing, I'll ask just one question. Whoever gets it right will walk away with this. We have a deal or no deal. Deal or no deal? Okay, so I'm going to keep it right here. The theme for today is unpacking food system and nutrition. And I'm really happy and energized to be performing at this event because it's not only about just learning, but we are also aiming at achieving food security. So if we say food security, what do we mean by food security? With one accord, can we say it together? Food security is the word availability, affordability, to meet their dietary need. Perfect. Now, this is what happens when you become food insecure. Have you been seeing these pictures lately? Yes. So it's important we have seminars like this so that we can address food security. Isn't it sad? Isn't it sad? If we have children like this, how can we be sure these are potential future leaders? So sad, isn't it? And we see them every day on the streets. So me, So many stories untold. One day for the road. Where your mama, where your papa, where your everybody for the household. Hunger, where your everybody, hunger. Hunger with the wire to the street with the name is every much I walk up with you. Then I bet you so many souls are lost, so many souls are dead, so many souls are dead. True that. Into the future leaders who come for years to come and they would not be the Philippine time. But how do you lie? How did you even get this far? But you just said the community go for sound. Simple world go for sound. Go for sound. Climate change go for sound. Black future, the future will be clear, but we need to suffer. Food security for my mind till everybody will job and will be sure. Do you know how we feel? But I'm on no job. Right from the boys ain't no sun. It gives me side. When has make you give hunger, hunger. When has make you give hunger, hunger. When has make you give hunger. When has make you give hunger, hunger. When has make you give 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 hunger. This I don't you. When has make you give hunger. 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 Energy. When has make you. When has make you. Listen. Killing is nothing. Mama Africa, maybe they do something. From the look of this, we gave back senses. We gave back senses. Listen, according to state, we hunger the rights. People know to survive, people they start to paralyze. People be life, people try it, mobilize. Fans, take support, this, them alive. You see this graph over here? The black man on top is telling us the rate at which food prices are increasing, and the black man shows that for Ghana compared to other countries. So if we have food prices increasing at this rate, can we be food secured? Can we be food secured? Therefore, we need to work on it. So then has making you hunger. 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 One last time. Then has making you hunger. 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 Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Should I ask my question? Would you love me to ask my question, or I should better? Which one do you prefer? Hey! Alright, then I'll ask. So my question is simple. We know the rate at which galamsey is affecting our water bodies and our land, isn't it? So who here, just one person, this one first come first serve, because we are plenty. Who can tell me how the galamsey affects our food system and our health as Ghanaians? How galamsey? Hey, I see one hands there. Hey, I sharp. Hey, show us our love, show. You can answer from here.
Okay, there are two. One, by cutting down trees, which may not help the plants grow and produce fruit. Two, by polluting the water bodies.
All right, that's true. Let's show some love. So thank you so much and enjoy yourself.
I think we can do it better for them. Now my worry is whether I can reach the level that they have reached. Okay, so whilst this is sorted out, I just want to say that thank you all for coming. Chairperson, President of the Academy, Vice President of the Academy, former Presidents of the Academy, Fellows of the Academy, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and I can see the students here, and I'm looking at the Accra Academy students, and I can see myself a couple of decades ago. You are all welcome. Thank you very much. Indeed, it's a great honor to have the opportunity to give this inaugural lecture and also to be introduced by my teacher from many years ago, decades actually. Prof. Chair, thank you very much for contributing to my journey. And there are many of my teachers here this evening, so I want to say thank you very much. Obviously, you did something good. Let me also appreciate all of you for coming. It is late. By now, people should have been heading through the traffic, but you made time to come. And to all those who are online as well, thank you. My lecture is titled, Unpacking the Complexities of Food Systems and Nutrition Governance. It is a statement, but then I also ask a question. I am hoping to stimulate an idea in your mind so that we will think about it beyond this place. But first, if you didn't catch it, today is World Food Day. And the theme for, I didn't plan it that way. The theme for the celebration this year is Hand in Hand for Better Foods and a Better Future. And I think the group that performed, you couldn't have chosen a better theme for that. Prof. Chair, given the theme's alignment with my lecture, permit me to invite all of us here to work together hand in hand across organizations, communities, families, and knowledge disciplines, whatever you are an expert in. I think everybody has a role to contribute to food systems, not only for us now, but also for generations to come. Showtime. Raise your hands if you like movies, like me. I see you over there. I wonder how many of you have watched this series. I can see some people bobbing their head. Okay, I confess, I haven't watched it. But I have heard about it, and it really got me thinking when I started thinking about the topic that I'm going to speak about. But for those who haven't watched it, I hired a lawyer, AI, to help me give a little bit of information about it. So this is what AI says. Game of Thrones is about the fictional continents of Westeros and Essos. It features a range of characters, including noble families, commoners, and mystical forces as they struggle for power, survival, and control of the Iron Throne of the Seven Kingdoms. These themes make me think of governance, the central theme of my lecture. So please keep this in mind as we go ahead. But for this evening, what I would do is that I'd like us to think about how food systems do what we expect them to do, and sometimes how they do not. And I'll start by painting a picture of the condition of food systems as they are locally here in Ghana and globally, and outline the challenges of delivering optimal diets and nutrition outcomes. But I'll also go on to unveil some of the failures in food systems and nutrition governance, including issues around prioritization and advocacy, sustainable financing, coordination and issues around how to get different actors to work together. And then I would end on accountability and capacity. And then I'll provide some recommendations. So please, buckle up for the next 6 hours. Not really. Food systems, what is it? What does it entail? For many of us, when we think of food systems, we are thinking about agriculture, harvesting food, aquaculture, etc. But it's actually more than that. In its simplest forms, many people refer to it as farm to fork. It's a process, and that process includes many and all the way up to waste management. Please keep this in mind. It's important to understand it in its broader sense. Now, along this process, there's much human interaction involving you and I when we go and buy food, those who are producing it. Now, that interaction is also very important because it has implications for our health and our survival as a people. We call that food environment, how we interact with food. Ideally, the food system should be a dynamic, sustainable, cyclic system that supports adequate supply, that ensures that the nutrients that we need is in the food that we are eating, and that does not expose us to harm, and that contributes to sustainable livelihoods as well, and does so in a manner that ensures that us and the generations that will come after us will continue to benefit from the food system. I've been teaching nutrition for many years in my career, and it's important that I also clarify the concept that I'm using, that I'm calling nutrition. For many people, many years, one of my cousins used to say that, this is my brother, he's a doctor. That's how he used to call me as a nutritionist. Many people think of nutrition as a biological science. Evidence from the 80s and the 90s taught us that we have to rethink the way we think of nutrition because it's more than nutrients and food and metabolism and genetics. It's more than that. There's also a social and environmental dimension. We know that food price and food quality, cultural identity, and issues around social networks, societal dynamics and change, all of that influence the way we eat. And that's the social aspect. But even that, let me give an example. We know that poverty is a key driver of what we eat and how that influences malnutrition. But I'm sure you know that it's not every family that is poor that is malnourished. There are people who have wealth and yet they have malnutrition in their home. So it's not as simple as that. There's a lot more nuanced way to think about it. Furthermore, incomes and livelihoods are not distributed in the same way across time and space. Therefore, where you live, where you get your food from, where you work and play, and when you eat, all of that also influences your diet and the effects on your nutritional status. And that's the environmental aspects of it. So think of it as a broader issue, not just about food and nutrients. One more concept, I think it's important to point this out, that food systems are complex and they are dynamic. And then they are also multi-sectoral. It's not only about the farms. It's not only about the hospital where there's a dietitian. It's actually very dynamic. But that dynamism also presents a challenge for delivering appropriate nutrition. In 2012 and 2014, I had the opportunity to participate in developing Ghana's current nutrition policy. And the idea behind doing that was that we recognize there are many different agencies that contribute to nutrition. So we mapped, at that time, 11 government ministries. And we're hoping that those ministries will own the process. By the time it went through the political mail and it came out, it looked different from what we intended. But the principle, I think, is that we need to recognize that nutrition and food systems are complex and they cut across multiple agencies. If we don't look at it that way, we don't make a headway. Okay, now let's look at what is our food system and what does it look like. And I'll start with the fact that I have bad news. It's really not working the way we want it to. We know that the world currently produces enough food for the more than 8 billion people who occupy this planet. And yet, the food system that we have currently is not able to sustain and give everybody what we need from that system. On the contrary, the food system sometimes harms us. And it causes problems not just for us, but also the planet because of the way we are running the food system. Let me introduce you back to what's educating for the group that came to perform to us. They talked to us about food systems, and they explained to us the definition for food security. Now, food security, another common term that is usually used for food security is hunger. But from the definition they gave us, you see, it's a more nuanced definition than that. It talks about the fact that all people at all times should have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs and preferences for an active and healthy life. Now, if we were to go by that definition, a lot of us will be food insecure. Let's look at the way FAO monitors this at the country level to see whether we are doing well when it comes to food security. The graph, the line at the top, shows the number of people who are food insecure globally. And the most recent estimate shows that almost 7 million people around the world are considered hungry. Now, this estimate is based on food supply. Okay, so it's just looked at if we have all the food that is available and we share it across all the people that are in a particular country, how many people will be left who wouldn't have some? Sadly, this is just a lot of people, if you think about it that way. And if you look at it in terms of percentage, 1 out of every 10 people you meet around the world are hungry. If we look at this in Ghana, the estimate is about 6%. And this is actually a lot of people because it amounts to about 2.1 million people who are estimated to be hungry. But it gets worse because this approach of measuring food insecurity does not look at how I am feeling the food security. Bob Marley was the one who said, "He who feels it knows it all." So there's another indicator that measures food insecurity, but this time from the perspective of people who are interviewed. And again, the FAO measures this, and they estimate that in 2024, almost 1/3 of people around the world experience moderate or severe hunger all year round. What about the situation in Ghana? The estimate, earlier on I said 2 million. The estimate, if you use this approach, is that about 15 million people are estimated to be moderately or severely insecure. So who is left? But that's about half of us are food insecure. We express that we are food insecure. Now, one of the reasons why that happens is because we are wasting a lot of the food that we produce. In fact, globally, about 1/3 of the food that we produce goes to waste. And in Ghana, it is a huge cost for us. It is estimated that every year we are wasting about 3.2 million tons of food. And the cost for that is about 76 billion cedis that we are throwing away in terms of food that we are wasting. Now, let me say a little bit about this high cost that we are experiencing because of wasting food. We need to be thinking about a healthy diet. A healthy diet. But the reality is that a healthy diet is more or less become elusive to many of us. When we think of healthy diet, we are thinking about diets that are adequate in providing enough of the nutrients that we need and that it is balanced across the different types of nutrients, and that we are not taking too much of the ones that we shouldn't take, and therefore that should be moderate, and then it's diverse across the different types of foods. It is based on this principle that we have developed the National Food-Based Dietary Guidelines. If anybody hasn't had opportunity to see it, you can actually find it online. It is freely available. But it's important to know that the cost of a healthy diet is very high. In fact, the Ministry of Food and Agriculture estimates that currently, well, the latest data is 2024. It shows that it costs about 12 cedis per person per day for you to eat a healthy diet according to the Food-Based Dietary Guidelines. And I'm not talking about you alone. This is the population estimate. And this estimate has been increasing. In fact, in 2023, it was 11 cedis. And we have recently done a study. We completed it earlier this year, and we found that in Ghana, it actually cost, in 2025, it cost an average of 18 cedis. And in southern Ghana, where we are, it's about 24 cedis. Is that your reality? But it's not just about the total food price. You would also realize that within the food, there are certain components that are more expensive, especially fruits and vegetables. The ones that are nutrient-rich tend to be more expensive. So people tend to cope. But the way they cope is to focus on ultra-processed foods, which are becoming cheaper. When I say ultra-processed foods, I'm talking about these ones. They have become cheaper. And it's much more expensive to get the nutrient-rich foods. Beyond that, the food system is also telling you what you should eat. Wherever you pass, is marketing something to you. And often, from the work that we have done, and Professor La in my department has been leading a lot of work on food environments, has shown that there's a lot more advertising of unhealthy food, and it is everywhere. Now, Prof. Chair, let me turn a little bit now and look at what is the impact of this changing food system on our nutrition. The food system is actually contributing to malnutrition in all its forms. It's a gradient. On one hand, we see that we still are living with a lot of undernutrition, and it's especially affecting young children, adolescents, and women in reproductive age. That's the undernutrition part. But then the other side, we are also seeing a lot of overweight, obesity, and diet-related non-communicable diseases. And these days, it's not only in older people we are also seeing that in young people. So none of us is immune to this because of what the food system is offering us. I'd particularly like to point one of these issues out: child food poverty. In 2024, UNICEF published a report indicating that 180 million children were living in food poverty. What this means is that they lack adequate quality in their diet. It is sad to know that in Ghana, more than 70% of children, young children, this is about 2.4 million, are reported to be experiencing food poverty. And therefore, it's not surprising to see that too many of our children are experiencing chronic undernutrition. And by the way, when I started working in this area, it used to be worse. It's getting better. But when you still look at the numbers, 17% of children, young children under 5 years, are chronically undernourished. It's still too high. And we need to do something about it. But if you carefully look at this data, you would realize that some of the gains that we made are under threat. Because something like the one in the blue line, we call it underweight. It appears to be upticking, going back up again, and that's not where we want it to go. The same with the red one, we call it wasting. That means a child is too light for their height. It's too light for their height, and that is also not acceptable. About 15 years ago, it was demonstrated that Ghana was classified among the 36 countries in the whole world which accounted for 90% of all chronic malnutrition. We need to take action, otherwise we'll be heading back in that direction again. And that is not a direction we want to go. We don't want to go there for a number of reasons. And I will demonstrate that with the findings from this report that was published by the National Development Planning Commission. They showed that malnutrition in young children is linked with 1.3 million clinical episodes of illness, and this cost the nation almost 400 million Ghana cedis in 2012. And also, 10% of school repetitions, children who couldn't do well in school and had to be repeated, 10% was due to malnutrition, and it cost the nation about 50 million Ghana cedis. If you put all the different kinds of losses together, our economist friends suggest that we're losing about $3 billion in a year. That's about 6.4% of the GDP to malnutrition in young children. It's too high a price to pay. Malnutrition is not only affecting children, it's also affecting women. This is the other side. We don't usually think of it as malnutrition, but overweight is malnutrition. And we are seeing that we are actually going higher and higher and higher. In fact, this last few years, the most recent survey of the demographic and health surveys showed that 50% of women in reproductive age are overweight or obese. This is the first time we have reached that high, and we need to really do something about it. And our food systems are playing a role in that. We have also been battling anemia in women for many years. It looks like we are coming down, but even where we are right now, WHO considers it as a serious public health problem, even with the place where we have come down to. The WHO has come out with a number of targets at its World Health Assembly in 2012 and has been tracking progress of countries around the world. Now, this graph shows, just focus on the red part of it. It shows the countries that are off track when it comes to meeting these targets. Almost everybody is off track, basically. That's what it's showing. We are all not doing well. What is the situation in Ghana? Well, we are not doing well either. We are making some progress, but we have a lot to catch up on, especially related to overweight, exclusive breastfeeding, blood pressure. Many of us don't know our blood pressure, and there are too many of us who are being diagnosed with excess intake of sodium, which our food system is really pushing to us. So that brings me to the point where we ask the question, how do we fix these challenges in the food system? How do we fix the malnutrition that we are experiencing? I would say, based on all that I have experienced working in this area over 2 decades, and all the literature that exists, I think one key area that we need to focus on is governance. And that's why I asked the question, is it a Game of Thrones? Now, the reason why I go to governance straight away is because I think that we know what it takes to fix this problem. It's the system of governance that is needed to take what is known and fix the problem in a consistent way. That is what is missing. In 2008 and subsequently in 2013, the Lancet Journal put out a series of papers, very interesting papers on maternal and child nutrition. 2 of the papers that I have shown here, they focused on effective interventions and basically demonstrated that we know what it takes to really fix this problem. But there were 2 other papers that also were part of this series. And these 2 papers essentially focused on the fact that we need to have better governance for nutrition. One was focused on country-level governance, and the other was looking at global-level governance. And I would like to share with you some idea of how do we know what is the situation regarding the governance of food systems and nutrition in Ghana. But since I'm not a governance expert, let me ride on the back of those who have worked in this area. Acosta and Fanzo provided this framework that I found very useful. They conceptualize good nutrition and food system governance as a process where we are making adequate policy decisions and doing it in a timely manner and committing the necessary financial and organizational resources so that we can effectively implement the solutions that we know. Now, to be able to do that, they outline 4 key pillars in this framework. And those are the things that I will be focusing the rest of the lecture on. They talk about horizontal coordination. This is how different sectors work together or not work together, as the case may be. They also talk about vertical coordination, which usually talks about the hierarchies within institutions. And then they talk about sustainable and equitable financing. And then one more thing that is important is evidence. Evidence for accountability and monitoring whether the ways we are trying to fix the problems actually work. But I'll start with one thing. We need to have a vision of where we are going, and we need to frame it appropriately. So I talk about prioritization and advocacy. Now, I believe every one of us in this room lives on a budget. If you live on a budget, you know that when you have your paycheck, you have to prioritize the most important things first. I would say food first. I believe all of us live by that, right? Current research appears to show, and consensus among those who are working in the area of development, show that maybe that's not the way it is, because we are not prioritizing our food systems and our nutrition adequately as a country. Nutrition and food systems don't rise up very high when it comes to the priority issues that we look at in human development in Ghana. But I was pleasantly surprised when I came across a document that demonstrated that it used not to be like that. And permit me to show you that. This was a report that was commissioned by, I believe, World Bank in 2011. And the author, let me quote something that he said that really got my attention. He says, after independence in 1957, Ghana launched its first nutrition initiative by creating the National Food and Nutrition Board. I don't know if any of the senior colleagues know about this. And this board was under direct control of the president. this governance structure operated as a ministry with its own budget and branch offices across the country. And it focused on educating the public on good nutrition and use of local produce for food. I would really love to meet anybody who knows a little bit about this. I'm really interested in that. But it showed me that at that time, we had a very high priority when it comes to food, systems, and nutrition. And this is back in the independence days. But then he gave the impression that over time, we've lost that priority for a number of reasons. In fact, right after Nkrumah's coup d'etat, the coup d'etat that took out Nkrumah, that board was dissolved because of some other things that were happening around that time. But also the HIV pandemic also contributed to diminishing the place of priority for nutrition. Now, I think COVID has also not helped. So many things are happening, but something I did in 2020, I was finishing off a project just before the COVID started. And I brought together a number of colleagues who were also doing things, and we said, let's organize what we called at that time the first ever National Nutrition Forum. And we brought together various people across the sector, and we brought in even the Minister of Planning at that time. And we had very fruitful conversations. But within that conversation, we issued out a communique. And I'd like to read you a little bit of the communique. And please remember what I read earlier on from Rogerio. So it says, we call on the government to, in line with the principles of the National Nutrition Policy, establish a National Nutrition Commission. We had gone back, and I had not seen this document. This commission should coordinate nutrition at both national and subnational levels. We also called on government to increase and raise the profile of the coordination of nutrition policy implementation, ensure the president plays a coordinating role in the work of the committee on nutrition. By the way, we proposed an interministerial committee for the policy implementation. And then allocate sufficient funding with clear budget lines for nutrition coordination programs and research. And since then, I have been knocking on doors to see if anybody will be interested in really sustaining this National Nutrition Forum, because I believe we can push the agenda and bring priority to these issues. I'm still knocking on doors. So the current reality is that nutrition and food systems continue to have low priority. A critical review of strategic national development documents over the years show that, indeed, food and nutrition security has found expression in these documents. But what we see is that typically it is characterized as food security. But when you read the details, the fine lines, the focus is really on productivity, agricultural productivity for incomes. And so you hear things like food for jobs and things like that. But we forget that food is also for eating and for nutrition. So we have not really made our food systems nutrition sensitive, which is something that we need to make very clear. And if we continue to package our food systems as just for incomes, what we do is that we diminish its priority when it comes to nutrition. So I believe that we need advocacy. We need advocacy because it would help us to be able to raise the profile for nutrition. I believe when we started fighting the issue of galamsey, a lot of the conversation was about water, was about forests. And I just couldn't understand why nobody was working in that area. So I had to carry out a study in that area and publish a paper on it, on how the food systems are also being influenced by galamsey. But we need a coordinated group of advocates who would work in the area to bring to view the fact that our nutrition is really important for national development. It is actually a driver of national development. Currently, we don't have that coordinated national policy for advocacy when it comes to nutrition, and I'm really challenging the institutions that work in that area and all who work in the area of nutrition. Let's come together and have a coordinated policy for advocacy for nutrition. How do we do that? I think that we need to bring together advocates. We need to identify champions who would help us to do that. And I believe the media, we have the media here, right? Usually they are in the background trying to cover the event. But I am calling on you to go beyond covering and dissemination. I think that it's time for the media to participate in that conversation and would love to work with you in this area. But I believe our advocacy would not work if it doesn't translate into political will. And that political will is a new thing that I keep learning about because I believe that is really necessary for what we are trying to do. I am convinced that nutrition is a political issue. We shouldn't kid ourselves. It is a political issue. And if we fail to really understand its political face, we may be defeating ourselves. Political will can be conceptualized as the degree to which high-level political leaders have expressed public support towards addressing a development issue, in this case, nutrition and food systems. In 2015, I was invited by a senior colleague and mentor at Yale School of Public Health to participate in a project. And that was where I first met Dr. Ashley Fox. She's a political scientist. And during my interaction with her, I found that she had published a paper in 2014 on measuring political commitment to food and nutrition security. That really intrigued me. What mattered to me in the paper was not the metrology, the measurement aspect of what she was focusing on, but the fact that you can actually leverage political will and study it, not for the way we look at politics these days, but what politics is actually supposed to do, which is bring about change. Her work suggested that where there is robust political will, it should be demonstrated in 3 levels. And permit me to show you these 3 levels. First, if there is political will, we should have high-level political officials make public expressions of their commitment to address food systems and nutrition. In my experience, politicians in Ghana are very good at doing that. Level 1, you invite them, they will politely come and they will share whatever idea and they will take the podium and do that. That's level 1. Now, the level 2, as Ashley taught me, is that it's not enough to just express the political. It should be accompanied by government-led initiatives that create an enabling environment that directly address the problem. For example, creating institutions, ensuring coordination, engaging private sector, of course, ethically, and getting their buy-in, and also generating robust evidence for accountability. That's level 2. This is critical, but it's often missing. Level 3 is even more important. That once you have reached level 1 and 2, your political will be functional if a high-profile champion has taken up this issue and then run with it by ensuring that there is financing and there is all that it takes, all the resources, the manpower that is needed to be able to push it. So, again, in my experience, there are all these political faces that we know who have championed nutrition, and we applaud them for it. But please, let them know that they did level 1. We are still waiting for levels 2 and 3. Now, I believe there are high-level people in this room. I believe there are high-level people online who may be listening and subsequently may hear about this. Please don't stop doing level 1. Do level 1, but also let's work together and do levels 2, 3. Let me illustrate with an experience with the food-based dietary guidelines. In 2021, the UN Secretary General recognized that the way food systems are going is not going to end well. And therefore, the UN convened a high-level meeting where presidents and heads of states were invited to come and make commitments to food systems. And our president was there and made the commitment that Ghana was going to implement food-based dietary guidelines. I was excited because at that time I had been working on food-based dietary guidelines for 5 years or more. It took us a long time for it to be done, but we were working on it. Thank God by 2023, we got it launched, and we got political leaders to come and unveil it with a lot of fanfare. Level 1. Since then, we have been waiting for level 2 and level 3. So this is how sometimes good ideas fail to reach the objectives that we wanted to reach. And it's not because we don't know what to do. The problem is that we don't take what we know how to do to the right place. I think we have done 4 hours. Another lesson that I learned from Ashley is that political will remains premature if it does not translate into written down policies and legislation. In 2021, I had the opportunity to do some work for UNICEF, and one of the key findings was that Ghana, we have plenty policies and legislation related to nutrition. Plenty. In fact, we counted 75 documents that are relevant for nutrition and the food system. I categorized them into 2 groups. One group, we call them nutrition-specific policies. These are the kind of policies that are directly linked to food and nutrients and are often implemented by the health sector. And in fact, most of the policies were from that, like the single sector that had a lot of policies was in the health sector. And then there were those from the other sectors such as sanitation, education, food system, food production, agriculture, etc. And you will find that most of them were focused on their sector mandates. Even though they could have implications for nutrition, they didn't have any objective that will move them to do anything about nutrition. I'll give you an example. In the Labor Act, the Labor Law Act 651, it makes provision for mothers to have paid maternity leave. This is really helpful for mothers who are feeding young children because they have the space to feed their children without having to worry about having income. And so they can be able to then breastfeed their children, which is really critical for early development. But that is not in the health ministry. It is in the labor ministry. So you see how we have all these legislations. We need to put those legislations down, but we need to figure out what are the nutrition-related objectives. And then we'll be able to allocate some resources to make sure that we are addressing those issues. There's another thing we found in that work I'd like to share with you. So myself and a number of others, led by Professor La, we were working on some other food environment studies. And we said, come on, let's look at all these policies that are food related. Are we even implementing them? There are plenty of them. Are we implementing them? And we identified among them 43 indicators that we know globally are recognized as important indicators that we need to be pushing. And we brought together a number of stakeholders and we say, look at these indicators and compare them with the way we are planning and implementing our programs. How well are we doing? It turned out that 3/4, that's 75% of these indicators were rated very low or low level of implementation. So we have the policies, we are just not implementing them. And there are a number of reasons why, and those reasons are also linked to sustainable financing. I'll talk a little bit about that. So look at financing. One of the things I would like you to leave here thinking about is that implementing nutrition interventions, it's actually a good investment. Think about anything that you have invested in. Think about how much returns it brings you. And let me tell you this about this study we had done, again, during the COVID period. Whilst people were locked down, we were busy working. So what we did was that we wanted to find out some of the key interventions that are known to be effective to address malnutrition, like micronutrient supplementation, breastfeeding promotion, complementary feeding promotion. How much do we get in return if we invest in it? Because we wanted to figure out why is it that we know these things work and we are not implementing them. And we were supported by the Copenhagen Consensus Center. They really focus on economic analysis. And the table here shows that for every CD we invest in multiple micronutrient supplementation and calcium, we will get back 18 CDs. For every CD, we get 18 CDs. Now, I ask you to think about the investments you have made. Then, for breastfeeding promotion, for every CD you invest, you get back 24 CDs. And then for complementary feeding, that was through the roof. You get 36 CDs for every CD you invest. We also had one nutrition-sensitive agriculture intervention in there. It involves giving chickens to families and then hoping that they would then harvest the eggs, eat some, sell some, and have a sustainable small business that gives them income. That also was found to have between 1.3 and 1.6 CDs back for every CD that you put in. I think this is a best buy. But the issue is that intervention, we have shown it is there, but we are yet to put this into practice. But let's remember, nutrition interventions, at least at the economic level, they make sense. So, what then is stopping us? We do actually know that when it comes to nutrition, we don't even know how much we are spending when it comes to nutrition interventions. But everybody agrees that we are not spending nearly enough. And we have done some studies on that, trying to estimate how much we are spending. One of the difficulties is that we are not tracking how much we are spending in nutrition. And it is difficult to do that because the government financial system is allergic to earmarking. So it doesn't earmark and say the amount of money we are putting in for nutrition. It actually gives a whole budget to the Ministry of Health where nutrition department sits. And then it trickles to all the various agencies under Ministry of Health. But think about it. Nutrition is not only in health, like I said. It's also in agric. So there's money that goes into agric. How do you figure out how much of the money that went into fertilizer that is nutrition? It's a tough thing, and we've been trying to figure that out. But some estimates show that we are actually allocating just about 0.5% of GDP to nutrition. Look at it, it's a best buy, but we are not investing in it. And things have also gotten worse because we have been depending a lot on overseas development. Development partners pay a lot of the bill when it comes to nutrition, but the financing space has shrunk. A lot has happened since the landscape in the US changed. And so a lot of nutrition programs this year have actually gone down. So we are needing to step up as a people from our own finances. But the problem is that we did some work for UNICEF this year, and one of the key findings that stakeholders are telling us is that although the financing sector has shrunk in terms of what development partners contribute, government has not filled the gap. So things have actually gotten worse, and we need to find a way to do that. The place where you feel this challenge the most, at the national level, things may be happening, but the place you feel it the most is at the district and local levels. Many years ago, I had a student from US who I worked with. He was working in the Ashanti region, but I brought him to Accra to do some work on district nutrition program implementation. Every year, the nutrition officers would develop a plan of action of what to do when it comes to nutrition. But it becomes just an annual plan because there's no allocated funds for nutrition. So one of the nutrition technical officers I trained, she says, what I do is I make up the plan, but it's not funded. So when the disease control people are going, instead of just sitting there, I also jump on their bandwagon. They don't have the resources to be able to implement their interventions. That is something we need to fix. Now, probably one of the biggest issues we need to resolve in this challenge is coordination. Now, there are different levels of this coordination. So here, when we say coordination, we are talking about the process of aligning, leading, and managing different sectors so that they can come together to achieve a common goal. And there are two levels of it. The first level we call horizontal coordination. This refers to how, at the same level, let's say at the national level, different institutions must come together. In the case of nutrition, it's not an option. They must come together and work together. Then vertical coordination is the hierarchy. And it's really critical to the way we can marshal resources to address nutrition. A few years ago, we had done a stakeholder mapping exercise to see who is working in nutrition, and this is how complex it is. There are multiple agencies who are working in this area. And without a coordinated direction, you don't know where you are going. You don't know who is leading so that you follow. We had done a study on this, trying to find out, how is this coordination working? And again, let me go back to Rogerio's work. In fact, it's really critical to our understanding what the landscape is. He had reported that regarding, and this is back in 2011, he had reported that regarding horizontal coordination, at that time, there was a lack of interministerial coordination and a failure of interagency coordination, creating a fragmented landscape of loosely held informal groups acting without any institutional basis. That's really an indictment. More recently, in 2019, a review of the national nutrition policy that had been, at that time, outlawed in 2016 was reviewed by Dr. Manson Nwafor from IITA, and he concluded that there appears to be confusion regarding the roles played by leading ministries, departments, and agencies in the coordination of nutrition activities. He therefore called for more team spirit among the MDAs, predicting that it will be difficult to achieve the nutrition objectives with isolated efforts. You get where this is going. And then in 2021, I teamed up with Dr. Nwafor on another study. I keep doing a lot of studies for UNICEF. So this also was done with UNICEF support. And I'm really happy that you are here to hear this. Now, we also concluded that at the national level, cross-sectoral coordination is disordered and fraught with power play between key actors. And the rest of the stakeholders are wondering, so who is leading? Who should we follow because of this power play and typically is between two key power centers, the National Development Planning Commission, which sort of coordinates a lot of development issues, and then there is also the Ghana Health Service. So we need to figure out the coordination issue. It's still not fixed, and we need to address that. By the way, there's a lot that I have learned over the system over time. So the Ghana Health Service has been running a coordination mechanism called NANUPAC, National Nutrition Partners Coordinating Committee, way back from 2007. This coordination mechanism focuses on implementation, but a lot of it is really about health sector related programs. And then it tries to bring in relevant partners. But that is not easy to do because of the level at which the Ghana Health Service Nutrition Department, it used to be a unit, and then it was elevated to a department. One of the recommendations that Dr. Nwafor made was that we need to elevate the level of the Ghana Health Service to a higher level. Otherwise, we would not be able to have that coordination working well. But in 2011, something happened globally. Those two papers that I talked about earlier on, it ignited a global movement, and that led to the forming of the Scaling Up Nutrition movement. And because of that, Ghana joined the movement and set up what they called a cross-sectoral planning group for nutrition. That also became a coordinating group, but it positions itself as coordinating policies. So now you have one coordinating policies, one coordinating implementation. How that works together, that's where the challenge is, and we need to figure it out. In fact, in our work, we also identified that there were so many other smaller coordinating committees also working together, and how they are connected to these bigger coordination groups need to be figured out more closely. Now, all that I've talked about is at the horizontal level, horizontal coordination. The 2016 National Nutrition Policy proposed that we should also have regional and district coordination mechanisms. On paper, that looked very interesting to do. In practice, it didn't really work because it required that we make changes in the way the districts and regional systems work. At the regional level, we expected it to work in the regional coordinating councils, and then at the district, with the district assemblies. One of the problems we have is that for some of the agencies, they are not completely devolved. The decentralization is not complete, and so they operate in a semi-autonomous way, and that brings challenges to that. And then there was also the finding that we made that without external funding, we couldn't identify any of the districts that had a coordinating committee, except 26 districts that we found in northern Ghana who were being supported by USAID. By the way, by the time we were doing that support had ended, and none of those coordination mechanisms were functional. So we still need to go back to the drawing board. How do this just work by putting it on our books and saying this is our policy? I know that the National Development Planning Commission is really working at this. I've done a number of studies for them, but one critical thing I want to mention is the fact that every 4 years, they get the district assemblies to prepare development plans, the medium-term development plans. And one of the things I did with them was to ensure that we incorporate nutrition priorities in those plans. Now, what is left is to make sure that the districts are able to do that. But by the way our National Development Planning Commission is set up, I realize they cannot make a district follow that. So if a district does not follow that, they can't do anything to them. We need to fix something about our law when it comes to how we address that. I'm coming to the end, so it's the last accountability and capacity. We need to make decisions using information. Information is driven by research, but we are not investing in research. Some work that we did between 2014 and 2016 shows that a lot of the research that we are consuming is coming from external sources because we don't have funding for local research. For those of us who are in research, that's one of our biggest headaches. Even when we get foreign research, the priorities don't always match with our local priorities. And that's advocacy that we really want to make, that we need to have local research funding to be able to drive that. We also collect data, the surveys that help us, the multiple indicator cluster survey, the DHS, they are not collected as frequently as we need them. For some of the indicators, they're far in between. By the time you see the results, you are too late to do something about it. We need to do something about that. Recently, the USAID shutdown, we were at risk of not being able to access the data. All these point to the fact that we need local funding to be able to have the research that drives our decision making. There's one thing also I'd like to point out when it comes to research. Those of us who are in research, we are always accused that we are publishing and it is gathering dust. However, we don't have a national mechanism that ensures that those in practice can be able to share with us the things that they need us to research on. And then when we publish our research, it's usually behind a paywall. And those who are in practice, not everybody is interested in our p-values. And so we need to find a mechanism that brings those two communities together. And currently, we haven't been able to sort that out. We carried out, and now I'm shifting to capacity. That's the last slide on the governance. We carried out a number of studies trying to understand, do we have adequate capacity to prosecute all these issues that we are talking about? In fact, there has been a huge improvement over time, and we need to continue to build that capacity. However, there are still gaps that we need to fill. I recently talked to our colleagues who are in dietetics, and I'll use that as an example. There are over 3,000, hospitals managed by the Ghana Health Service across the country. If we were to put a dietitian in even half of these, that would be great. But currently we have, from the estimates I've got, we have 54 dietitians. There's huge capacity deficit. And the international community's draw on our capacities is also not helping. So there's a lot of people moving out. We need to find a solution because that has implications for our ability to address our nutrition challenges. So let's come back to where we started, the Game of Thrones. If food system and nutrition governance were a Game of Thrones, who will sit on the Iron Throne? And how would the battles we fight today decide the future of what we eat today and the nutrition of our children and those who will come after us? Like I said, I have not watched the movie yet, but I think there are some key themes that the Game of Thrones can teach us. There are many actors involved in nutrition and food systems, and we are competing for the same resources, and the resources are not enough. And there is the food systems that are influencing us, whether we like it or not. And there are many actors working in the food system. The Iron Throne in the Game of Thrones resembles or symbolizes power. If you have power in the food systems, you can change a lot of things. I believe that the power is distributed in our hands, one way or the other. Who decides what, how, and the way the food system should function would depend on us. We need to demand that the food system work for us. And those who have influential voices, like I said, please don't forget levels 2 and 3. So I'll conclude. Food systems, the way we know it in Ghana, are not optimal. And the progress that we have made in nutrition is commendable, but it's too slow. Food systems and nutrition currently do not have the visibility that we need it to have. There's a lot of people who have misperceived what it is. I hope that today we'll be able to bring some clarity to it. Maybe one of the big challenges is coordination. We need to do better at harnessing the resources that we already have. But we also need to invest sustainable financing into it. We should start by tracking what we are investing. And then we need to optimize the institutional arrangements for this. Now, a few thoughts about how we can do this. We need to prioritize the food systems using a whole of society advocacy approach. And I think that we need all of us to figure out how do we identify champions and advocates. And I believe that there are champions and advocates in this room. I would particularly like to acknowledge Madame Paulina Adi. I know you are here in the room somewhere. Really a big champion for the implementation of the food-based dietary guidelines. We really appreciate you for all the work that you have been doing. Earlier on, I mentioned the media, and I come back to you again. I think that you have a big role to play in shifting our mind when it comes to food systems and nutrition. And we are calling on you, I am calling on you, that you become involved, not just reporting it. There are also a group of very innovative people we call them influencers. I think that they can play a big role in creating a movement about how to get decision makers to step up to the actions that we need. So if you are an influencer, please remember you can move things, and I encourage you to move. Then food systems needs financing. I think one of the low-hanging fruits is to track and trace the investments we are putting into the food system. And one of the areas I would really advocate as a low-hanging fruit is the food-based dietary guidelines. Anyone who is interested in enabling that process, please let the Ministry of Food and Agriculture know about this. We are really looking for the resources to do that. We also need to invest in capacity, institutional capacity, especially capacity outside of the health agencies, because they usually don't employ people with training in nutrition, and yet they need to have the capacity to align their programs so that they can yield nutrition benefits. And we need to do that. We also need to elevate nutrition coordination. I want to make this strong appeal to government, whoever is listening, whoever can make them listen. We need to establish a National Nutrition Commission and elevate the conversation above one particular agency or ministry with oversight by the presidency. I think it is that important. Do you agree with me? I think it is that important. And finally, I think we need to have accountability. Accountability through the kind of research that we do and the monitoring and evaluation. But to do that, we need to strengthen the data systems. We need to strengthen our monitoring system. Right now, we have a situation where health is generating its own data, Agric is generating its own data, and everybody has its own data systems, and they don't talk to each other. We need to find a way to coordinate this. On that note, I say thank you very much for listening to this lecture. Prof. Chair, I'd like to do a little bit of acknowledgements if I have a few minutes. I thank God for where He has brought me in my journey and the opportunity to give this lecture. My family is here. I thank you very much. My father is not here today to see this, so I decided to wear his hat. He literally owned this, so to him. And my mother is also here. Thank you all for bearing with me for all those long nights and traveling. My mentors, there are many of them here. I'd like to single out especially Professor Sefadede for creating the opportunity for me to become a fellow of the academy. He didn't give me a choice. He asked me to bring my papers. And then there are colleagues here, colleagues who I have given a hard time. I have worked with, and they have made me better. And all my contemporaries, thank you very much for the input you have made in my life. I've worked with multiple collaborators, and I would like to acknowledge them for all the work that we have done together, including those in the Ghana Health Service. I've seen some I've worked with for many, many, many years. They are here, and I really appreciate all the help and the guidance from all the various government agencies, the non-governmental agencies. Thank you very much for all your input. And then those who have funded the work that I have done, openly and secretly, I thank you all. My students, my mentees who are here, I thank you for teaching me, because I also learn from you as well. And thank you for being a great audience. I'd like to thank the officers and the staff of the academy. Shall we put our hands together for the staff? They've been really great in putting all of this together. And I just showed up to come and talk. Once again, thank you very much, and I'm grateful for you coming. I leave you with the World Food Day message.
The president of the academy, past presidents of the academy, vice presidents, fellows of the academy, ladies and gentlemen, and our distinguished students. We love you, because all of these things that we are doing are for you, because you are carrying the future. When Professor Ayite started talking, and he said that he had asked a question whether the topic that he has given is actually a Game of Thrones. He said he was going to attempt to answer whether indeed it is a Game of Thrones. You will bear with me that the last hour or so that he has spoken, most of them about what he himself has experienced and what he has documented, there's an indication that indeed this is somewhere near the Game of Thrones. Let me explain. You see, he has listed quite a number of issues: human nutrition, public health, food systems, and public policy. And bringing all of these together is a fact of coordination, a fact of governance, and a fact of bringing training and putting people together to undertake an exercise. All of this involves money. So when he talked about the throne of iron, actually, in our situation, we are talking about the throne of money. Funding, we need funding to be able to do all of these. I mean, going back into 1957, at the time of the First Republic, or through 1957 into the time of the First Republic, there were ideas that were floating, which were good, but which unfortunately got stunted, and we couldn't continue. But we need to remember, and again, going back into history, those of you who are literally enough to remember the Battle of Waterloo, we talked about Wellington's army marches on its belly. It's a quotation. You can quote from anywhere. The reason why this reached that level of prominence was because the battalion which were under General Wellington were well fed. In other words, it was not just food that were given to them, but food that had nutrients. So what Prof has been telling us here is the idea that, yes, food, but the nutritional part of the food is what is most important, to ensure that we have people in this country who are able and can stand to defend this country in whatever situation, academically, physically, just mention it, in any form. That is what he is referring to. And of course, being somebody in public health with very strong interest in policy, I believe those out there who have been listening, you will bear me out that this is something which needs to be taken care of. Because if we continue the way we are continuing, where young children are becoming more and more interested in gogomi, I'm sorry to use the Ghanaian word because that is how I have been referring to spaghetti and all these things. Anyway, I'm just making this as a flashpoint because it's something which is creating obesity in our young folks. We are not eating the proper food. Okay. So, having given us this body of knowledge, which I believe will be something which will be taken up by policymakers, which includes us, policymakers, which are the politicians, whoever they are, and wherever they are, all that we are saying is that we need security of food and nutrition. That is all that we are saying. On this basis, I would like us to express gratitude to Raymond. Can we show a better applause? Before I take my seat, I had wanted his family to actually stand up so we will see them and give them a proper applause. God bless you, Mama, and God bless you for giving him to us. God bless you. Thank you.
Right. I guess our chair has inspired us to clap for Professor Aryetey's family. So we would like to also acknowledge and recognize our chairperson's excellent summary of this rather important lecture. So a round of applause for our chair. Right. Thank you very much. There will be a presentation, two presentations from UG in Carbon Collaboration and from Professor Ayite's family. So, yeah, you're welcome to proceed. And so a presentation by Professor Ayite's family. Right. Great, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Eugene and Carbon Initiative. Thank you, Eugene and Carbon Initiative. Right. Right. So, as a special dispensation, Little Legon community is asking to also make a presentation. Little Legon community. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. So at this juncture, we're almost at the end of the program. A couple of quick announcements. We'd like to acknowledge the sponsors. Happy to mention that this lecture was sponsored by Professor Richmond Ni Okai Aryete himself. That is a unique event, and we'd like to acknowledge Professor Aryete for that. At these lectures, we also very heartily recognize the presence of the next generation, we call you, right? So schools who attend today, we have Accra Academy. And then Accra Girls Senior High School. Thank you very much, the next generation, for gracing our lectures. We appreciate, always recognize your presence. As mentioned previously, UNICEF Ghana has also emerged from the lecture, has been a solid support for our distinguished lecturer. and we've mentioned the presence of UNICEF Ghana representative. We also have Educating Through Music that have also rendered for us a reinterpretation of the whole question of nutrition and its lack and its many networks. So thank you very much, Educating Through Ghana, through music. I would like to mention that on 23rd October, there will be an inaugural lecture taking place here and to be delivered by Zikpito Professor Ladewo Sonu. Professor Ladewo Sonu is an emeritus professor of surgery, and he'll be speaking on the topic, the provision of space for implantable prosthetic lungs, a Genesis, Envoy, and Healing Word. It promises to be interesting, and we are all welcome to be present. I think it is also very much in order to mention that we do have a number of fellows of the Academy here present today. You are all very well recognized. We do have our past president of the Academy, Professor Samuel Sefadede here, our president, Professor Emerita Isabella Achimba Kwachi, and we do also have a fellow of the Academy who was our immediate past Chief Justice, Justice Her Ladyship Sophia Ekufo, also here, also a fellow of the Academy. All right, so almost at the end of the program, I'd just like to mention that there will be reception in the foyer right across, and for our students, as always, because time has gone well past the time we would like you to return to your campuses, you will have your snacks packaged, and then you go with that. I have been informed, and that Accra Academy is the school that Professor Ayete has attended. So they have requested to sing the school anthem, and then we will bring the program to a close. Yeah.
We have built nations of men. Ready? Sing. We have built nations of men. We will make great men of them. Generations of scholars salute you. Black and gray acknowledge you. A lifetime of feeding in tossing ways and deeds. Ese kwam rideri, ese kwam rideri, ese kwam rideri. True to the spirit we live. Grab the substance, leave the shadow, and onward to the truth. As a one we a great family in the eminent struggle. Let us hold on to our aim, being steadfast and courageous to make our mother proud. The envious achievement with God and our concept, Esequam videri, true to the Spirit we live, grabs the substance, leave the shadow, and onward to the truth. Esequam videri, a great family.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Accra Academy. I didn't quite get a Latin, but I heard that you have raised gallant men. That will be sufficient. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to say thank you all very much for presence. We appreciate you for being here. We've come to the end of the program, and I will respectfully ask that you kindly rise up as a speaker, leaves the platform. Thank you and have a good night.